say like if you give yourself space, there is no traffic. Like traffic is the relative space between two cars. So if everyone left 30 feet between each other all the time, that's kind of like your brain just having all these little different paths that it can go off and take, and you can kind of analyze what you're doing. So when we were out on our road trip,
the big question is this: how do we take a seemingly ordinary world and make it beyond extraordinary? In yoga, there is so much more than meets the eye, and it's not just the things we do on our yoga mats that make the biggest difference. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name is Austin Bitsis, and welcome to Life as a Secret Yogi. Hello everyone, this is Austin Bitsis, and welcome to the Life as a Secret Yogi show. Today we have a very special episode. We can call this episode The Love Story, Adventures, Music, and Lessons of a Yogi Couple. The Yogi couple being Meghan Kramer Calleo and James Calleo, a husband and wife yoga teacher duo. So Meghan and James, welcome to the Life as a Secret Yogi show, as we hear not only your life as a secret yogi, but also how you've helped and continue to help others embody their secret yogi and really just make life beautiful. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We're so excited.
Yeah, no, I'm super grateful that we could do this in person today. And also, as a special bonus on a already special episode, what we all thought would be an awesome perspective to this show is to have my girlfriend, Devyn Davis, as the co-host to this episode. She just happens to be a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, Reiki practitioner, tarot card reader, and studying source point therapy at the moment. She already has a few meditations on the show, but if you all like to see her some more as a co-host on this show, let us know. If she does a good job, of course. But yeah, Devyn, welcome to the show as your first time co-hosting.
Thanks for having me, Austin.
So for everyone who doesn't know Meghan and James, I'll let them tell their stories, but one thing to note is Meghan just happened to be one of two teachers who taught me through my 200-hour teacher training program. So that's like a bonus on top of already bonus episode. The other teacher being Celeste Cusimano, which you may have recognized from the Yoga for Pregnancy episode not too long ago. So I owe a lot of my yoga knowledge to Meghan, and Meghan and James are super genuine, authentic individuals with a great perspective on life that we can all learn from. And yoga, music, travel, and getting outside their comfort zone and sharing it with a community of like-minded individuals is a huge part of their lifestyle, which we're going to dive more into. But before we jump into it, and so I can stop talking in third person, a little bit about the audience of the Life as a Secret Yogi show. Our audience are those that want to take the practices of yoga, meditation, breath work, energy work, animal-assisted therapy, among other related tools, into the real world. It's a lot of people who are looking to perform at a higher level in other disciplines such as running, golf, surfing, weightlifting, freediving, basketball, art, music, entrepreneurship, and so on. Or to simply those who just want to live a beautiful life. And the audience does not necessarily have the desire to become the stereotypical yogi or yoga teacher. Nevertheless, the audience would like to utilize these tools to make life beautiful. And in short, this message of the secret yogi is that we all have this heroic self. It's our inner source that we cultivate through the tools of yoga, meditation, breathwork, animal-assisted therapy, and these related tools to take a seemingly ordinary world and make it extraordinary. It's that we all have this superhero that lives within, and these tools allow us to tap into our quote-quote superpowers. Our superpowers being mindfulness, awareness, love, focus, and creating happiness from within, to just list a few, but ultimately just feel good in a body that we love. And someone the other day asked me what the secret in secret yogi meant. And it has really two meanings. The first is, it is the things that we do off our mats that are often most important. Therefore, as we take our practices into the real world, they are in the secret of others. The second point is that yoga is not the only tool that can make a seemingly ordinary world extraordinary. Yes, it is a proven path that has been shown to work, but we find that other disciplines work sometimes just as well. And if it's the moving meditation of running, if it's writing, if it's music or meditation, or a combination of whatever disciplines. And I hope that clarifies things a bit. And we really hope this episode helps you unlock your own superpowers. And if you like it, make sure to consider leaving a rating or review and share it with at least one person that needs it most. So without further ado, welcome to the show. And yeah, I mean, Devyn, you want to take it away?
Yeah. So, I don't know you both that well. I know Austin knows you more than I do. So, I'm curious about kind of how you each found yoga individually first.
Individually.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to a community college, and I was around, I think, 19, and I found that I needed another outlet since all my friends were at college, and like at home. So I found a yoga studio right across from, my dad was a chiropractor, and it was right across the street from his practice. So I started going there, and then I found that I just loved it. And one of my first classes was a glow-in-the-dark Bob Marley flow. So it was really nice to like hop into that, and it was dark, so no one saw me, and after I just felt so amazing, and I kept going throughout that time because it was just a kind of a challenging time just to be trying to figure out who you are as a person. And so I started going almost every day, and then I started skipping class and going to yoga, and I was just having I felt like I was learning more, and just having like more of this experience, or I felt like my shell was coming out from the yoga practice at that age. And then so I told my parents at one point that I wanted to take the semester off and do my yoga training, and I wasn't happy like with school, and my mom was totally like supportive of that, and she helped me like pay for my first training. So that's nice. How I found it. And I used to be a dancer, so losing that and like not being able to do like your sports in high school, or I did pole vaulting and track and all that, so it was like I was missing that outlet. And then yoga came in, and it was really more like the physical part of it. I really wanted to like get in shape and like look good, and then all the other things just kind of like trickled down from that. And so I took the leap as a teacher when I was, I think 2014, yeah.
Wow, cool. Yeah, no, that's it. And then I know like that kind of led to a bunch of other kind of experiences as like once you kind of took that leap, which we could kind of dive into in a sec. And then James, how'd you get started?
So I got started because I lived, so 2018 I went to college at University of Missouri, and my family, I had a bunch of... No, 2008. 2008.
I'm 2 years ago.
12, yeah. So 2008, I went to the University of Missouri. I had a bunch of family there, so I figured it was like kind of my home away from home as I, dove into college. But then after a year of going to school, I left school because I was doing bad things and not going to class and whatnot. So I told my parents I wanted to come home. So I came home, and then quickly I transferred like a semester later to a place in Texas called Texas State University. And there's the same thing came back up where like I fell into bad habits, ended up living in Texas for 2 more years after dropping out of school. And then I moved out to Washington State for a little. So I was jumping all over the place. I ended up hitchhiking down the coast of California with a friend. So just life was confusing, and nothing was falling into place at all. So I called my parents, and at the time they were living in Brooklyn. So I was like, hey, Mom, Dad, I'm going to come live with you guys in Brooklyn. They're like, we're moving to Hoboken. And I was like, no, like, why Hoboken? Like I wanted to go, get a new fresh start there. But regardless, I came back to Hoboken, and what I needed was a fresh start. So finding a way for that to happen was through Groupon. So I just started looking up any fitness things I could do, and I took my first yoga class at this place, Devotion Yoga, and I really dug it, enjoyed how it made me feel. At the time I was, quitting smoking and just trying to, put a different habit into my lifestyle. So I kept going to yoga, and then that month ran out. So then I was like, I can renew my month. So I got a month at a different place. And then eventually I met Meghan, and she took me to my first hot yoga class, which was an experience. I think she gave me like a sweatband.
He wore like a sweatband and he had crazy hair.
Yeah. I was just like the rogue yogi. Like, who is this dude? That's how I felt coming in.
And your knees were like up to your, like he was sitting cross-legged and he's like,
yeah, I just
now it's like
still do that.
amazing.
But I just struggled, but I was okay. I saw progress, pretty quickly. Just I guess in a physical and mental sense, it all just kind of started to align. So from that point, which I guess we'll touch on later too, I'm a musician, and while Meghan and I were hanging out, I would just play guitar, and then it was weird because I would always want to just play my guitar on downtime, and Meghan would want to do yoga. So instead of having to like go in separate rooms and do our favorite things, I was able to just sit on the couch, and she would start moving. And then eventually she was like, would you want to start a live music and yoga class? So through that, I was getting a free membership at this one studio. And then after, I guess like a year and 2 years of live music and yoga and free yoga, I decided to take the dive and start teaching. So I did a yoga teacher training, and it was the best thing. I quit a job to do it, so
wow.
it was good. I think I put down like the X amount of money it cost me, and then quit my job because I wasn't able to do both.
Well, it's kind of like throughout it, you realize too, how you realize some things as you go through the training of like actually what you want and what do you want to be surrounded
through
with.
Through those 2
you found
years,
like that it wasn't bringing you joy, so you like that was kind of the push for you to change your job too. So
right. So then.
So going back a little bit, how did you guys end up meeting each other?
all right, so we wish we had
So
like
we
a
went
really
to
cute
we went to
story.
we went to high school together. I was a
Okay.
senior, she was a freshman. We didn't know of each other.
He lived on my street
My senior year.
his senior year. He lived like 2 houses down from me. But we never talked. I remember my friends, we would walk past his house because they would sit on his front porch, and we were freshmen, like kind of in our awkward phase, and walk past and we'd like giggle and laugh, and they never looked at us. So that we knew who each other were. And then when I was going through my teacher training and he came home to live with his parents in Hoboken, I was on Tinder in class, and I swiped and I saw James's face, and I'm like, oh, he's cute. I remember him from high school. And
So because you were friends on Facebook
and then
stuff.
it said, you have a match, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, so I literally I've been
And
like
then we are embarrassed.
I've been dating in Hoboken, just like doing whatever, trying to find a female companion for the time I was living in Hoboken. And then I started seeing like Meg like hiking and stuff on Facebook, just like scrolling, and I was like, all these failed relationships, whatever. So I was on my phone one night. My buddy's like, you got to try this thing called Tinder. So like I pulled it out, and I just started.
Tinder was new.
Yeah,
it wasn't
yeah.
like
This is six years ago or something. Wow. So like within 30 seconds, I like saw Meg's face. So I swiped. It was like boom, like you matched, and I was like, oh my god. So like I deleted the app immediately, and then I went on Facebook. I was like, hey, I don't feel it's appropriate for me to, say we started this relationship through Tinder. So I invited her to go on a hike.
Yeah,
nice.
and I was at my teacher training at the time. I remember on a break, and I see this Facebook message because like when we matched on Tinder, my heart like dropped. I was like, he's so cute. Like I don't know, like I like feel like I noticed him before that anyway. And so he sends me this message, and I'm like sitting there eating my almonds at my yoga teacher training break, like, oh my god, guys, look, this guy asked me out for a hike, like, I'm so excited. And so he came and picked me up, and my parents had a chocolate lab at the time, and his sister had a chocolate lab that he like borrowed from her, and we hiked together.
Power move.
And we hiked for like we were gone for like 6 hours or something, just talking and walking, and we just like never, it felt like we knew each other like right away. And I come home and I like walked through the doors and I was like, Mom, I met my soulmate. I was just, we had such a great day.
And she hiked like I did. I like to like just go bushwhacking, and she was doing it, so I was like,
and we
this
dunked
feels
our
cool.
head like under waterfalls, like climbed trees.
I jumped in. You jumped in.
And then there was we jumped in I think it was early April.
Yeah.
So it was really cold. We jumped in our clothes and we were just like, this is amazing.
Oh, and like a river or like
a little lake there.
Yeah. No, that's an awesome
Yeah.
story in terms of like, not only did you guys kind of find.
I think it's kind of romantic.
No,
You
yeah,
said it's
no.
not.
Well, the Tinder part is never.
Well, not a fit. I mean, it kind of makes it like.
Yeah, but it was romantic that you
romantic
went
that you
off
like, yeah.
Tinder and then messaged her.
Yeah, can't.
So romantic.
And in terms of like, you guys both kind of had your own like paths that like you found yoga before you guys met, but also like kind of, it's funny how like-minded people just connect, and like just kind of how we connected, and it's it's just interesting. And like going on a hike is something that not a lot of people do. It's like, hey, you want to go grab a drink, you want to go do this, and that's, I don't know, to me, I feel like do something that you enjoy, do something out in nature. And then look, you guys spent 6 hours together, where normally when people get a drink it's a couple hours, and like and then what, you're not in your like true state, and so I don't know, I
feel like
think
eye
that's
contact is a big part of those things too, because when you're hiking, you're just like, you're just looking around, and there's all these like, just thoughts are flowing easily, where it's not that forced kind of conversation
like this.
God, when I first met Austin, even my friends, when they met him, they're like, oh my god, he gives the most intense eye contact.
That's a good thing, though.
No, it was good. Yeah,
that's so funny.
But it's
some people we're used to like wandering eyes all the time, like especially.
Now we're all like super self-conscious of it.
I'm directly looking at
my mom used to always tell me, like, make sure you give the teacher like eye contact, and it's like, so I was little, I'd be like, and like the teacher, and she's like, and like, don't talk like to your friends. And one time this teacher like called my parents in and was like, we're really worried about Meghan, like we don't think she has any friends, she doesn't like talk to anyone, and she's just like really like. But outside of the classroom, like, my mom's like, are you kidding me? She's like the class clown. Like, she's just like, so it's funny what sticks with you, you know?
Yeah. And in terms of, it's funny that you, James, you got started in yoga through a Groupon, because actually that's how I got started. My mom introduced me to yoga. I had like a really severe hip flexor injury, and from my collegiate running career, and I had to kind of quit that. And long story short, that's kind of how I found yoga, through a Groupon. So everyone listening, definitely check out Groupon.
Is Groupon still a thing?
It is,
Okay,
Is it right now?
And
no,
probably not, because of the virus.
when it comes back around.
Yeah, when it comes back around. And then in terms of, I know, Meghan, you shared a really awesome story about your trip, your first night in India, and then kind of where it led from that. Can you briefly just share a little bit about that, and kind of like, one is like your decision to go over to India, because you could have just kind of got the training anywhere. So like, what was kind of like your rationale, and do you recommend that, like thinking in terms of the audience, like if somebody was thinking about that, of course not during this time, but and also like, what was your experience and kind of lesson from that?
The reason, we can backtrack a little bit. So when I met James and we had this amazing like summer together.
It felt like Greece, like summer loving.
At
One summer to make it count.
At the end of the summer, James was like,
I think it was in June. It was like at the beginning of the summer. Oh, sorry, that I.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
So James's aunt gave him an offer to like go volunteer in India. So he was going out there first, and we had only been together for like 2 months. So he's like, I'm going to India in September, and I thought maybe that's the last time I'm going to see this person. This could have been like a summer thing. So he leaves, and it's always been my dream to go to India, and I also like loved him, and I'm like, I don't want to lose him. So I signed up for like a yoga training, but I ended up not doing the training there. It just like didn't fall into place. But James, I hadn't heard from him. It felt like it was 2 weeks. It was just a couple days.
That's like 2 days.
And he calls me, and like I was thinking like he's in India with like there was another volunteer there, and I'm like they just fell in love and they're jumping in the ocean. I'm like picturing all these things, and he calls me or like emails me. He's like, I really want you to come here, and he bought me a ticket for like the end of November.
Month, yeah.
So we'd only been together like 2.5 months. Then you were in India for 2 months, and then I came out to meet him at the 2-month point, and we went. He picked me up, and he was in at the airport, and the whole time I'm thinking India is gonna be like the eat, pray, love experience. I have overpacked. I'm like chatting the whole way. It took a bunch of planes to get there, and there was this one woman, Trish, who is like a traveler. She's like, here's my email, just email me like when the dream like is over. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, if you need anyone to talk to, because I was just like so young and like just turned 21, like going to India, gonna have this experience. And get off the plane, I see James, and he's in like traditional Indian garb. He's wearing like this skirt called a mundu. And I'm like, there he is. So we get in like a little tuk-tuk, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're just like these little rickshaws. Mm-hmm. And we're driving through. We were in Fort Cochin in southern India. And we stop at this like, there's not really stoplights there. It's sort of
it was like the one stoplight, I think. Yeah.
And then there's this truck next to us just like spilling oil.
There's like a petrol truck, and there's just like this oil, and Meg's like, what? Like, and then all this smells like, you know, burning garbage, and
it's very intense.
Because we were, it was Kochi was the airport, but Meg didn't. She came in thinking like, going to India, like I just got my yoga teacher training, like this is going to be a beautiful experience, and it is, but not in the ways that you could ever expect.
Yeah. So like I've never left the country before, so that was the first place I went. So anyway, kind of fast forwarding a bit, you started volunteering. Well, yeah, so James was at this school in it was called Ullanur in Kerala, the southern state. Yeah,
southwestern India. And, so a little rural village. Yeah, a
little rural village. And the first night we got there, like we weren't supposed to be allowed to stay in the same house because you're supposed to be married, and they wanted me to be in a separate home. But I was in India, and James worked really hard to like try to get them to let me stay in the house like with him, but we had to stay in separate rooms. But we hadn't seen each other for like 4 months, so we're like, yes.
And so we only really been dating for 4 months.
Yeah. So we, of course, we're like sneaking in and out of each other's rooms, but no one else was staying at the house. We just had this woman, Ponama, who would come and like cook for us, which was like amazing food. I gained literally 20 pounds in 3 weeks. Like, I'm not kidding. Like my big like India like hippie pants weren't fitting me anymore because they would just feed me so much. But yeah, so our first night we're just like so excited, and we were just laying together, and there's a window in our bedroom, and all of a sudden like there was a car that drove up, and like someone had flashlights and was like looking in the house, and we were just like laying there like, what do we do? I'm like, James, I'm scared.
Yeah, she goes, James, I'm scared. And I was like,
goes,
me too. But I had, there had been no problems up until that point. So it was just weird that the first night, you know, a woman got into town. So I was thinking like, oh no, is this safe? Whatever. So we wake up in the morning, and we go to the head mistress, and we tell her like what happened. And she was like, oh, like there must be some explanation. And then Shaji, the school like caretaker, he comes in, and he doesn't speak much English at all. And he goes, oh, no. He goes, dead body. We're like, what?
What?
So
Yeah, I
he
was
takes
like,
his cell phone and he shows Meg. There's a picture of a woman's body on the road. He's like a week ago, or probably it was
Yeah,
some
it was
ongoing
recent.
investigation about a body that was dumped like down below where the
Right
school
by our
was.
house was.
He was thinking it was gonna help. Like, no, they weren't here for you. They were here
For
investigating.
the dead body. So
dead
that
body.
just trickled
So
and
that
made
amplified
it.
Meg's like.
But it also showed like their culture's so different where they have such a different outlook on like death.
Yeah.
And here we don't see like it was totally fine for him to like have this picture of someone and I've never seen like a deceased person like so that was pretty dark. Anyway, so we had to leave the school because we felt like we just needed some time just for that week.
Yeah.
I was like, I just feel like I need to get out of here. And we went to this place called Varkala, which was on the beach, on the cliffs. And this was probably like 4 days into India. And I'm just walking and I just break down. I'm just crying. Like, I just want my mom. Like, I just wanted like a hug. So we're at this place and it was good. And it was
And Meg
fun.
found out I was like kind of slightly famous in Varkala already.
Yeah, he had been there before, and they're all coming out from the restaurants like James New York. They're calling him James New York, and then they were walking, and he got a gig as we were walking. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah,
How
and
did
they
I know
made these
you
like
here?
posters like James New York, Saturday night special,
Yeah.
one night only.
So,
But anyways, we get I think
Yeah.
back to like the whole yoga part is that what was cool is that Meg comes back to the school, so we're all refreshed after
Yeah,
this
yeah.
week off, and there's about 80 kids in the school, and we got them all together and we were going to lead them through a group yoga class. None of the kids had ever done yoga. None of the teachers had ever done yoga. So
Yeah.
our Western perspective on like the yoga situation in India, it's not this countrywide thing that everyone's doing. Like
Yeah.
everyone's aware that it's there in some capacity,
Yeah.
but
they had never done it, so it was so ironic. Like thinking I was gonna be learning and doing a training there, and I was actually teaching them yoga and meditation, and it was such like a
yeah.
backwards but
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
But their little
exchange.
it was like the coolest little like
Yeah,
80 like kids from 8 years old up to like 12.
Well, we'd start oming, and then they're in middle schoolers, so then all of a sudden the om would just start to turn into a scream, and then everyone's like,
Yeah.
and the echo like inside was because the school, it was, you know, they didn't really have like, it was like very open doors and
It was just concrete.
like concrete,
Yeah.
but no like there was no
Yeah, no
doors. Like
windows,
there would
no
just be
doors,
like
no
little
windows.
puppies running through, and we actually found 2 dogs that we nursed back to health, and we called them Tapioca and Pudgy. And they were so cute.
They had
Because there was
fleas.
all these tapioca trees. They had little fleas on them, so we left them. Like what you're supposed to do is get a bucket of water and shine a flashlight on it, and the fleas like jump off the dogs into the water at night. So if anyone ever needs to use that trick, because
Yeah,
they're
that's so great.
attracted to water. But the school wanted to get rid of the dogs, but then we ended up really like you know, kind of melting their hearts with them, and the kids would be like playing with them. And actually a beautiful little story of the dogs was when our last
yoga. Let's talk
no,
about
but our
puppies.
last day that we were there and we were saying goodbye to all the kids, it was heartbreaking because we were like, what's gonna happen to these dogs that we just like have been taking care of for the past month?
And they were like 6 weeks old,
Yeah,
probably
and
when we
they
first found them.
and
Like,
they
were
just
tiny.
would follow us everywhere. Like they thought we were their parents. So we have all our bags packed. We're walking down the hill to get in our rickshaw to leave for good. Like everyone said goodbye, and like Pudgy, who was just the chubbier one, that's why we named him Pudgy. He's like following us down the hill, and we're crying like, "No, Pudgy, don't go back!"
Yeah.
And then he'd stop, and then he'd run, and we're walking like, "No, Pudgy." So it was like we got to
We're
say
like, "Do we
goodbye.
take Pudgy?
What do we
Like, what do we do?"
Like he was following us like so far, and then this little boy comes walking up the hill, and he sees the dog, and then Pudgy stops and he looks at the kid. And
we're like, "Go,
yeah,
Pudgy."
Pudgy,
Yeah.
go!" And Pudgy runs into this little boy's arms, and the boy's just like
Yeah, the boy, like,
holding
picks
him
Pudgy
up,
up.
and like, and he
my
walks
God.
away with him, and we're like, "Oh my god!" Like, it just was like such a beautiful moment, and we were able to leave knowing that Pudgy and this little boy just like had this connection. So
And I think that's a great segue into like the next section, which I wanted to talk about, which I know is really meaningful to yourself, Meghan, and yourself, James, is our connection with nature. That's a huge part of this show, and we talk about animal-assisted therapy, but also that you can kind of get the same benefits just being out in nature, right? Just going out for a walk, just going out for the hike, like your guys' first date. And so can we talk a little bit more about like this connection with nature and how you kind of integrate it? I know you do, Meghan, like yoga hikes. Yeah. I know you just recently started, I think it was environmental biology you started studying.
Yeah.
So like kind of how that integrates with the message of yoga and how we could all learn from not only letting nature be our teacher, but also, like the lessons of nature and how that kind of relates to the broader message of what yoga is.
Yeah, I think that nature, it's such an important thing, and it's almost like when you get into nature, it does the rest for you. It just at least for me, it just like automatically calms me. And just being surrounded by all that green and the earth and that natural state is like all what we're trying to kind of work for in yoga, is just being able to, right, go with the flow of your conditions of your life. And it's nature adapts in those ways of, like it figures out ways to get around problems and all these things. And it's just, I think for me, like that was nature, and hiking was actually my first kind of introduction, I would say, to a meditative state. I used to go, my mom would, our grounding, if we did something bad, or we weren't bad kids, but she'd make us wake up with her in the morning, 5 a.m. and hike before school as like our punishment. And then we'd learn that we would actually end up like talking about what, and like coming up with this solution. And something about nature is just so healing. So I found that I would hike, and just all those thoughts were able to slowly, I would be able to almost observe them and let them just kind of sift through me, just like how the meditation and yoga practice can do that for you.
Yeah, I feel like just even meditation being a scary or this far out thing for a lot of people is, instead of thinking about how sitting silently can be scary, just go do anything in silence, and you might be able to find that meditative quality. So walking in the woods is like one of the most amazing things, because you're just listening, and even if you're not sure what you're doing, you'll come out of it feeling refreshed, because your thoughts they take on their own. And I think one of those big things is, they say like watch your thoughts go by, and then finding silence or trying to quiet your mind doesn't always work for people, and they might get, if you're task oriented and you're just focused on trying to quiet your mind, maybe you can't, but like the nature, just letting your thoughts go with the flow until eventually it finds that equilibrium of just like there is no more thought, and then you're just moving, and then that's the yoga practice, except you're moving further than 6 feet on your mat. So.
It's just a different expression of it, and that's the whole idea of the secret yogi, is that yoga is one path to the same end goal, where it's like just getting out in nature is one. And like it sounds like you had an awesome mom, like for anybody listening out here that has kids or nephews or something, it's like that's a really amazing way. And for me, running was my first form of meditation. It was like a moving meditation, and it was also my form of connecting with other people, and in a way that, like you guys mentioned, like a first date, it's less intimidating than, and you kind of open up and connect, and you all feel grounded and refreshed. And something we spoke about on the show is farm therapy, which people are like, what is farm therapy? And it's like, and then you go out to a farm and you just stay out there with the animals and out in nature, and you're just like, whoa, I was so stressed this week, and like now I just feel so relaxed and I'm refreshed. My creativity is back. And Devyn, did you have something you wanted to say? No.
I think it's also when you like see something so majestic, or you look out at the stars, or you're looking out over a mountain that you just hiked, and you have a moment where you're like, oh my gosh, there's something so much more than
Yep.
all my little things that I stress about on the regular. Where I think that every time we go on a hike, it cleanses our soul, and then you remember that you live on a planet, not just in your little apartment, right? And then you remember to take care of the world, and you feel like almost small, but also really big at the same time, when you're just...
It's also those
Yeah.
little things that would be stressing you out. Like, for example, like little things in like your full-time job.
Yeah.
And you go out in nature and you're like, that shit doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
I've been doing
Why
this.
am I...
It's like every time we go on these adventures,
Yeah.
I feel like we're like, it doesn't matter, let's just live our life to the fullest, and we'll just quit our jobs and live in a van or whatever.
Down by the river. But you mentioned something about getting your creativity like sparked or something like that. So there was like an analogy about your creativity being compared to like traffic. So if you're bumper to bumper traffic, well, the space between the cars is what creates the traffic or less traffic. So if we're jumping in our routines from waking up right into our job and then getting home from the job and then going straight home and like turning on the TV and then just filling, that's traffic.
Yeah.
And then you wonder why you're going crazy, but you're never giving yourself the space to analyze. So say like if you give yourself space, there is no traffic. Like traffic is the relative space between two cars. So if everyone left 30 feet between each other all the time, that's kind of like your brain just having all these little different paths that it can go off and take, and you can kind of analyze what you're doing. So when we were out on our road trip, I just started writing songs like none other because I had space. Even throwing the mat down, in your typical day, I think the reason people keep coming back to their mat once they start yoga is that 2 hours that you've given yourself to get to point A, if you're not practicing on your own at home, that becomes your space because it's an empty state, I think.
Yeah, no, I love that analogy actually, and I think that really like connects to. Yeah, I haven't heard that. That's like a great perspective.
It's not, I heard it from someone.
It's just,
He heard it from
it's
me.
just James.
But it was great. But it was great. I definitely.
No, yeah.
yeah.
No, I like that a lot because it's just a space. People don't realize that that's what meditation is. Meditation, they think, is like this act of doing something, but it's really the act of not doing. And these other practices are a great way to also create space because, like, if you can't meditate, well, then do something that's less subtle of a practice. And if you can't do, like, and that might be breathing, which is still the act of doing something. If you can't do breathing, then it's like, okay, what's the next thing I could do? Maybe it's go for a run or work out or do a physical, like, asana practice. So there's like these tiers, but then it all kind of leads down to subtler, and the act of really the most subtle practice is really the act of not doing anything, and that's the act of meditation. But it's not always accessible to everyone. I know myself, like I have a hard time meditating. I do a lot, and it's just like those other practices really help me, and that's what I've found works for me. Some people, like Devyn, just rather meditate than do yoga. So it's all relative. And then this kind of, so we're talking about nature, and a question that I ask.
Well, I was going to ask
sure.
question that was like kind of more relationship wise.
Okay, well, this is a really quick question. So, and we asked it to every guest who has a dog, is the lessons we can learn from not only nature, but our canine sidekicks. So like in really brief, like what is the kind of the lesson that you've learned from living with your dog?
Yeah. So we have a little dog, Millie, and I would say definitely some lessons living in the moment, waking up and just being so happy to be alive. Like she wakes up and just starts wiggling like, oh my gosh, it's you guys, like every day. Like the day is so great.
It's beginning.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like Buddha. He licks
Yeah.
her face in the morning. Like,
Yeah.
"Come on, wake up.
And
play
then
with me."
even like she just takes you out. If I'm having a crummy day or something happened and you walk through the door and she's like, it doesn't matter what happened. Like,
Yeah.
I love you. Like, just unconditional love. Like, how we could try to live a little bit more, like, just loving unconditionally, like, everyone. I think our dog loves every person.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't, we are like, what's going on there?
Right.
But then also, especially with a dog, you have to get out of your house. So that's the other thing. Like, it just breaks people out of that mold where, like, if you're going through a rut and maybe you're spending all your time inside. I mean, that's what happens a lot when you get low with yourself. Is you're like, I'm just not even. You have to go out with a dog. Like, you have to get out in the morning. You have to find a way at night to get outside. So it constantly pulls you away from maybe other things that you think you should be doing. Yeah, because you're like, oh, I have to walk this dog. But once you get out there, you're like,
In all the
this
elements.
is great. Yeah, in all the elements. Winter,
I was
like, I've had
just
the
gonna say
best
that, in the
winters
cold.
because of the
Yeah.
dog. Because you actually have to go outside rather than sitting inside and
Yeah.
being like, it's so cold outside, I'm not going out
Yeah,
today. It's
and
like, nah, you suck it up, you gotta go do it.
We've
And-
had some great adventures with her, like in the storms. We're like, all right.
Yeah.
We got her a rain jacket 'cause she didn't
Meg got
like
her
the
a rain jacket.
and then she didn't walk in it, so we're like, all right. But
She just like stood there.
Yeah,
Why
it's
did
like,
you put this on?
Yeah.
so that didn't work out. But we would be in like all the snowstorms out with her, and like no one would be out.
Yeah.
And so it would definitely, I think we did have the best winters that we ever had, because once we got our dog, we've had her for 3 years, and we're like, oh my God, that winter went so fast. Because, yeah, just getting out in any weather, you realize, oh, I'm just so happy that I got out.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
You do less like Eeyoring about like the weather and stuff because you're like,
Yeah. Don't let it stop you from your plans,
Yeah.
you know?
You get out of yourself, and it's also like an act of service to some other living creature that's not only that ourselves, and we get out of our thoughts, and like it's not me. Sometimes it's like there's other creatures, and they show it through the expression of like that unconditional love you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I just love to ask everybody that has a dog or a pet or just loves being out in nature that question, because
Yeah.
it's keeping a log and you kind of find these similar trends. So I love to share it with the audience, and I'm compiling a list of all of them. But Devyn, sorry I cut you off. What were you gonna lead to?
Just like going back towards both of you guys teaching yoga. As a couple, do you ever feel like you are sometimes competitive?
The beginning.
to each other.
Oh, yeah. So the beginning was hard because, first of all, James is really good at, like, everything that he does in a great way. Like, he can pick up something and just, like, be amazing at it. And I'm like, yoga felt like the one thing I was, like, good at. Like, I didn't have many other things, like... So anyway, when
and you were my teacher.
And he would come to my classes, and I almost was like, after you do a teacher training, you have this totally different perspective. So, like, I also didn't want James to come to the other side and be like, Meg. Yeah. So anyway, but I also wanted him to, because I'm like, this would be great. But I definitely had to go through my inner, like, it was all insecurities, and just of him being a guy, too. I'm like, and we weren't engaged or anything. I'm like, is he gonna see like a cute girl in class? And like, because now you're like on kind of like on stage or whatever. So we definitely had moments, and then like he'd come back from his teacher training and be like certain things. And
I'd be like, well,
why don't you teach it like
my
this?
teacher said this.
And I'm
don't
like,
get on our high horse.
well,
don't get on your high horse.
Yeah. So like we definitely had these, or like throw the yoga book, and we'd be in our studio, and I'd be like, like we'd get in these yoga fights.
It was always
it's just about like alignment or whatever, and it was pretty fun.
Well, no, it was, but I feel we're like all those conversations were on different levels because Meg was saying, it took her about a month, maybe 2 months to let down her guard, to not be overprotective of her yoga, because it's not our, it's our yoga. Yoga's just a thing. Like, it's nobody owns it. Flows aren't trademarked. It's like
and
all these.
There's enough space for everyone in this world, and I think it was just that anticipation of, because he was also, again, he started your training and he was just like
I think
so good right away.
I taught
Wasn't
3 days
worried
before
about
I
public
graduated.
speaking.
What studio had
and
me.
I was comparing my experience with his as he was going through his training. I'm like, it was so much harder for me. I was so afraid of speaking in public and getting read, and he just was picking it up like this. And I think a little part of me was like, it's not supposed to be that easy, you know? Like, he's like, this is such a breeze. I'm like, no, it's not.
Well, and the connections and stuff that, you know, I'm so thankful to the fact that Meg, you know, made such an impact in the local community prior to me becoming a teacher, because through her, I was able to meet all these studio owners, and I was able to meet the students and meet all the teachers. So my just networking, as I put my foot in the door, it was built in. So I was able to get jobs immediately, and it helped, you know, being a male in a female-dominated industry at the time. It's starting to shift course a bit, but when I started teaching, I was like the first male teacher at a couple of the studios. So my ins were far greater than Meg's were when she got into
I think
it.
that was part of our earlier conversations, because I really had to, like, I didn't know anyone, so
it was brand new to you. Like,
I
Crow
had
Pose
to,
was new to
make
you. And,
all
the
connections and, like, get denied a bunch of times. And so then, but then once we started getting, like, you started getting in the teaching and I would take your class, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's awesome. I can't wait to take your class. And we started to, what was beautiful was just, like, being able to connect with, like, your partner on that level.
And I think there's, like, isn't there a sutra that's, like, it's something like, if you find yourself being angry with someone else's success, like, you have to change your perspective. Like, be happy for those who are happy. Have compassion for those that are sad. Like, don't be annoyed by other people, because that was
noticing your reactions too when something's going really well and maybe not for you, and can you genuinely be happy for that person, not like, oh, I wish it was me that was getting the promotion or whatever. So, like, we definitely were put in situations throughout our journey of even building our success in Jersey City and Hoboken, where, like, we would both try out for one studio, and, like, I remember once you got hired first, and I'm like, it's okay, like, I'm happy for him, but you definitely are like, this is not every couple has to, like, go through that together, and then working at the same places. But then we got through that.
We always talked.
And we always talked through it, and always, like, ended up also, like, doing yoga together and putting that to, like, the practice to work, like, in our relationship too. Like, hey, this is for everyone. Like, we can do this. Like, we're just getting, or I was just getting caught up in, like, why am I feeling this way? And then we would talk, and
it was a steep, but it was a quick.
We got
it was
so
a quick
much
learning
stronger.
curve too.
Like, if he didn't teach yoga, I mean, we'd still be together, but it took our relationship into.
I mean, you don't know. You just
He's like,
really, like, strengthened us, and I don't know. And then we were able to put our creativity together and come up with these things where now we had two people. Like, we would lead the yoga hikes together, and then we would, like, you'd play music in the class, and then people would come out and go to his shows. So it was, like, this really great,
it was a beautiful
networking thing together, like, to be, like, together. And now we're like, maybe we shouldn't tell people we're, like, when we're teaching, like, we'll keep it a secret that we're together, because maybe people will come if they think we're single. So now we're, like, at the point where we don't really care, like, whatever, do what you gotta do.
Yeah, these are long. When,
because your sisters told you.
One time it became, like, when it finally became, like, Meg's idea, like, it's not an idea either. It was just more of being like, we don't have to boast about, you know, the relationships we're in, because we're comfortable with each other. Our trust is, like, beyond full. And like, Meg used to come out, like, when she first started, you know, watching me gig, she would come to, like, every show and basically be like almost sleeping at the table. 2 a.m.
on, like, Monday nights.
And
like,
these are just so, like, crappy.
Tired.
Not crappy. I've learned through COVID, every gig I'm blessed for, but she would, like, just be there as like a safeguard. Like, I wonder if any.
No, that's not true.
But I'm just saying those. It is
I
true.
wanted to be there
those
for
things
you,
would
but
happen.
also probably was like, well, then if I'm here, he can't meet anyone.
Yeah, that's all to do with like trust
It's
and
all
stuff
a new
early on in a
relationship,
relationship. Like,
you know.
if I went to a yoga class, like I got like mad competitive if I was next to a guy who'd been taking Meg's yoga class forever, and he's like trying to do these things, and I'm like, oh, like I'm looking over, like I'm gonna do a handstand, like, and then it's just stupid stuff that you have to go through, and don't be ashamed of your stupid thoughts, you know, that you have in a relationship. As long as you can talk about them, like you will be able to succeed. So even a yoga relationship, which you guys are now like beginning.
So
what's your thing?
I was just going to mention, like, for everybody listening right now, even if you're not like a yoga teacher couple, I think it corresponds to a lot of things we're talking about to other disciplines. It might be in work. It might be in other things, maybe running or whatever other hobbies or sports or professions that they're in. I think this all corresponds. You just kind of substitute that we're talking about yoga with another discipline, and everything in terms of like communication, talking, trust is applicable.
Have you ever felt competitive?
Yeah, actually, every time I go to, well, it's a little different for me. So in two situations, when I go to yoga class, I'm actually almost don't like to kind of fully express my practice in terms of like handstands and stuff, because and the same thing goes when I'm running on like a trail and I'm about to like pass somebody.
No, I'm talking about like us. Like, have you ever felt competitive?
No. It's more of like to the other people. Like, I don't want to like discourage anybody from doing something. Like I do a handstand, and the next thing you know, people are discouraged because they like, oh, I can't do that. Or the second,
or they're just getting hurt and they're
or the second thing is my own ego, and it's like it's going to be the one time I fall out of the handstand, and I'm going to look like a fool.
I've totally done that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like letting go of the ego.
I just like hit the wall.
Yeah.
But I think you have to.
I think I like broke my toe once trying to show forearm stand, and there's just 3 people in the room, and I'm like, I did this nasty fall, like flipped into like a forearm wheel, and then my toe, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Just like made so much noise.
Yeah, and you're
like,
like,
oh,
don't
God, are you
now,
okay?
don't do it like that.
But I feel like both ends of the spectrum are equal, where not doing something because you're worried about other people's egos is your ego.
Yeah.
You know, being increased because you're like, oh, like just everyone just has to be, you know, as Meg says all the time, and just be the best version of yourself. And if you can find a way, and I feel like that's what we're all hoping to find, is I just want to be able to find a way that while I'm doing this, I'm doing it 100% for my own expression, and I'm not trying to radiate anything like off of myself. Like, as far as I don't want to discourage people. I don't want to, like, once you shake that feeling of, are people watching me? Then that's when like the world just like opens up. Like I never thought I'd be able to do yoga at a park. And then after like 3 years of doing yoga, all of a sudden I'm like in a park just doing yoga, like Warrior 2 and like all these like they're just big like expressive poses that could make you look like, sorry, I'm rambling, but if you ever go somewhere and you see someone in, let's just say a park, because we're on parks, if they're enjoying themselves and they're doing this thing, whether it's working out, like a guy doing like thousands of push-ups
like
to your left,
Yeah, I was gonna say
or someone
Tai Chi.
doing Tai Chi,
Yeah.
I have never looked at any of those people and been like, why are they doing that? But yet, when we're the ones doing it, we always think that someone out there is being like, why is that person doing that? When most of the times you're just inspiring by being who you're being, because someone's like, whoa, it's that easy to just like be yourself. Like you just like it's such a cool feeling just to. Yeah.
But I think too, like bringing those feelings into like when you teach and encouraging, everyone's got different things happening in their mind and different egos, and I feel like to open up your class like, and just encourage everyone. Like, it's okay if you want to, like, my favorite classes are when a teacher gives you permission, because I know that feeling where you're like, I'm not showing off, but maybe they're going to think I'm showing off if I'm adding a handstand when it's just a vinyasa. So when you get that permission, like, and if you have something in your practice, you want to take it further or you want to bring it back. Like, I love when people offer me that, because I'm like, okay, yay, I can flourish now. It's kind of just like, I get that, where you're sort of, you don't want to like offend someone or, but it's,
or to seem like you're trying to stand out or something. Like, you know, unless someone's doing mountain pose and you're like, look, I'm going to do reverse mountain pose. It's like I'm on my head, like, you know, there's a time and a place, but
No, I think your intention is good, and
it's true. Like, I know a lot of times in yoga classes, people will hear that this idea of riding your edge, and I hear it a lot in yoga classes, especially lately. I've been taking a lot of online classes, and I actually wrote meditation. So sometimes I share the meditations I write with in the show, and this idea of riding your edge, and it's kind of going on with this ego. And I don't think what people, or at least my perspective, is that we don't just have one edge. And like when you talk about riding your edge, there's two kind of edges, and that kind of goes with ego too. So in terms of like a physical expression, and you're trying to find split, let's just say, your edge would be, people think about is like not going past that moment where it becomes from stretching to stressing, like and overstretching. But there's also an edge of like not pushing yourself enough. And that goes the same thing with the ego. And what we were talking about, there's like two ends of it. It's like your own ego, and you think about like I want to be better and than somebody else, like this competition. But there's also like this idea of kind of like what I was just talking about in terms of like I don't want to discourage people, and like there's this constant balance in this idea that you were talking about. It's like you look at somebody doing Tai Chi in the park or working out with their kid or doing sprints, and like one, it's like not to be just to kind of do it yourself, but it's also this idea of like what we talk with the kind of like the quote for the show is, and it's to take a seemingly ordinary world and make it extraordinary. And when you could kind of incorporate everything that we're talking about today, from like the stories to the nature to this topic right now, it's like taking like what people think is a seemingly ordinary world. And I'm a very like picture like analogy type person, and I think of it like this gray area, and then it's just almost like Narnia when you open the door, and it's like this beautiful like colorful world, and everyone's like happy and playing and frolicking. And it's like when you could take these things and like switch that perspective from the thing that we're viewing it from, which is ourselves, so we could work on ourselves to help the collective like universe. As they say, we're one. You can really make the world extraordinary and make it beautiful. So that's my perspective on it, at least. I don't know if anybody else has.
I love what you just said, like when you talked about play, because that part of why I love yoga so much is like getting adults to play again and trying to like, and seeing them, some people uncomfortable with like going outside the box or falling, and like just remembering to play. And that also goes back to like our animals, how they bring us back to that, like James, you're like sometimes a very serious person, and then he's with our dog and just like rolling around, like goofing around. Just, I think that aspect of playfulness makes life so beautiful, makes yoga beautiful, makes everything that you do. Like just keeping that youthful like outlook on things. And even when you're out in nature, I feel like we just go out and play and we're like, look at this leaf, oh my god, there's moss, like let's like touch it, or like I think jump in the water, and that makes you feel so alive.
Prior to having a yoga practice, I can recall being like 24 years old and being like, I'm not an active person anymore. Like my body just didn't feel active. So you'd wake up and everything would be forcing yourself to do something, and you're always forcing yourself to, maybe I'll go for a run, but I'm forcing myself to go for a run, or I'm going on a hike, once again forcing. And then just once I started just getting into yoga and being like, oh my god, like I can do all these things. Like I had to let my guard down, you know, especially let's say just for any guys out there who you just make excuses of like, oh, my hamstrings or this and that. It's not any of that. It's always your mind, and you have to go through the repetitive process of just putting yourself out there, and then eventually you don't feel like you're putting yourself out there anymore. You're just doing all that naturally. So like going to a yoga class by yourself eventually, from going with Meg, and even performing on a stage, like it was, I have to perform, and then eventually you're just performing. So it becomes natural. So when play becomes natural, that's like such a liberating thing when like you want to play over anything else, or
even just happiness and smiling becomes like so easy and natural.
And that's what Meg has been, a light for me when we first met. And I feel like to the students in the community that she teaches, is Meg's relentless with wanting people to play and have fun, but not in an annoying way. Like you just bring that out, and I feel like that kind of becomes the vibe in your class, where you're not a strict teacher. Everyone has the teacher that they need, and I feel like people that gravitate towards Meg's classes are like, we're gonna play, but we're gonna be challenged. We're gonna be challenged to play, and then eventually it just becomes natural. Like your Sunday class, and she's had this one Sunday class at this studio that when she started you were the least experienced teacher by like 10 years.
Well,
so
they were all like 40 plus and 21, and
they were like super
what
yogis.
Wisdom do I have?
Yeah,
coming in here?
Because even the students were well practiced.
They were all like 40 and up,
and like doing handstands and stuff. Meg's like, I'm gonna be nothing here, but Meg just like was herself and has created this community where pretty much like 40 people would come out and pack the class, and majority of the clients being like 40 plus, and everybody's playing. Like everyone would be talking, like, because we all have these things when we go to rooms.
Now we can't do all these things.
I know.
Yeah.
But I miss, like, I'd be like, high five each other. All right. And they're like, we love it.
Yeah, I just
put
love
like
that
Michael Jackson.
everyone finds their vibe, and and you lead through letting people feel like they can take the chance to play, which is just like, it's super cool.
Yeah, that's a great lesson in terms of I kind of wish, and we've talked about social yoga on the show before, in terms of like, I kind of like that, where it's just like some people are so afraid to talk during a yoga class. I mean, right now it's kind of the opposite of social.
When I'm walking into a room and people are just like staring at you, and like no one's talking to each other, I'm like, oh, okay, let's all sit in a circle.
But it's this unspoken rule that's not even a rule that people believe in. It's like this idea, you're going to interrupt somebody's practice if you say something, but it's like, no, that's what creates a great community, by just introducing yourself, saying hello. I mean, in terms of the class, like, I mean, that could be your own practice, but like before and after the class is totally fine. To high five during a class is a great thing to kind of break your mind out of that, and then pull it back, and then just have fun and play.
That's kind of life.
And like, I feel like it teaches you, at least through yoga, and like through the teacher training, seeing people genuinely like support each other, and like, you don't always see that in everything, or like rooting for someone who maybe is like
gonna take
doing
your
better
job in a month.
you never know. Like, you don't. It's like genuinely really wanting that person to succeed, and like being happy for that person in the handstand, and not hoping that they fall. Like, right? Yeah. It's all about
what's that full circle?
Just accepting everyone, and I feel like with yoga we get closer and closer to that. Like, the more you get into the practice and you find that community, and you find those people that really have your back and really love you, and that just feels like so good. You don't find that all the time.
Yeah, you start to learn
yoga,
that.
I found
that like supporting with all your heart, encouraging gets you so much further as a community than discouragement or blacklisting somebody or just being like, oh, that's the annoying guy in class.
Yeah, it's like, no, that
and
person has a story, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and in terms of community, I love this idea of like finding people that are like-minded in terms of the goal to, like, no matter how diverse a group is, it's this collective mind to realize that our actions are contagious, or our thoughts control our actions, and our actions are contagious, so make them good ones. And it's like this collective group of people that are trying to make life beautiful, and they know it's not just their own perspective, but it's like a collective kind of perspective that really makes it, because it's this idea that we always hear that's like, oh, we're all one. It's like, and then when we're talking about like that, it's like to kind of break that down further, and I feel like some of these concepts are lost, and even like when I first heard them, like I didn't really understand it. Yeah, until I started really talking to a guest on the show, and I'm realizing that's when I really found the message of the secret yogi. I had an idea what it was, but it wasn't until I was maybe 5-10 episodes in, I'm like, I'm finding these repeated messages, and it's really beautiful. So in terms of, I mean, Devyn, if you want to ask, in terms of, I know you mentioned a little bit about like insecurities, and I'd love to kind of take the guests through this idea of overcoming obstacles.
I mean, we did talk about that. We talked about like communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, I know also that you guys are rock climbers. I know Meghan, you're afraid of heights.
Oh yeah.
I mentioned you something about improv, which is awesome, because I know a lot of people, like, they're not yoga teachers maybe, but they might have to do a presentation at work, or and they build up this anxiety. I know myself, like I'm I build up this, like, if you just throw me into a presentation, I'm fine. But if I have like 2 weeks and I'm like every day I'm thinking about it, and it's like then
you start to overanalyze and second guess yourself.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. So I don't know if you guys have any kind of words.
Yeah, so improv is one of my favorite things. I started dabbling in that last year, and I did like a show. My whole family came. No one else invited their family and friends because they were already like actors, and they were just doing this for like brushing up or whatever. But what
was your initial?
Anyway,
like,
so,
what was your push? No, I'm just saying, what was your push into the improv?
Into improv, I've always wanted to get into theater, and I was always afraid of public speaking. Through yoga, I got more confident, but I always had this curiosity of like theater, and when I was in high school, I wasn't in the group that would probably support that, so I feel like it was something I had always wanted to be on stage. And there was one time I did try out for this play, and I got the main part, and I chickened out and didn't go to school that day, and I never got to go on the stage. So it was like in the back of my mind, like, I just need to like get this over with. Like,
and that was like the first one, but then the second was for when you started your yoga training, the first time you had to go up and teach class, like you broke out in hives.
Yeah.
So all this is leading up, it's all leading up to improv.
Was red, like, just had to teach Tadasana, and I'm like, put your feet down, oh my god, like, open your fingers, like, I don't know what I'm saying. So, like, but I've always felt that I had stuff to say if the nerves just would go away. So I still get like that, like, I think right now. But improv was so awesome because you don't have that time to prepare. Everyone is in this vulnerable position, and they just throw things out there, and there's no wrong answer. The whole rule is yes and. So even if someone says something silly, you're not saying like, no, that doesn't work with the scene. You just have to play off of what they did. And it's just so much fun because they throw you into a scene like, all right, now pretend you're like you're a boss, and then you have to fire the person, and like they don't tell you who you are, and you just have to like go into those roles, make it work, and you never know where it's gonna lead.
It's like just further
it's kind of like
training
how life
through
is.
Play, through play, which was super cool. When Meg basically, like, she'd come home and like just be talking about all these improv like tricks, and like we would like pretend to like run scenes together and stuff at home. But it was cool because Meg's thing was like, I want to have that like extra, I want to be able to strip that extra layer off me that's still stopping me from certain social interactions and stuff. So she started just researching improv and ended up going to the Magnet Theater in the city.
It was like every Friday night for 10 weeks. I was spending my Friday doing it for 4 hours
She would come home glowing, just like...
And I'd be like, that was the best Friday night ever. And
it does make you feel really good. I did improv in high school. I used to take that.
It's so fun.
But I would come home too, like...
Yeah.
Just like feeling...
Because you're just putting yourself out there. You're doing things that you normally wouldn't do.
But I would get so nervous going there too.
And then it was also that community too, similar to yoga, just really roots for each other. Like they clap after everything you say. Well, there's like things and you're like, wow, I feel so good, even though you might think in that moment like, oh my gosh, that was so...
Yeah, there's no judgment.
You don't have time to even judge yourself because everyone's like...
Everyone's supporting you, yeah.
So
that's awesome,
if the world was more like improv, I mean, life is pretty much like that, and to learn how to improvise on the fly, and also even with conversation, I always felt like sometimes at like say a dinner party or a family party, and you're like with the uncle that you don't really
and the creepy uncle.
And it's like all about saying like, or even sitting in that yoga class where everyone's quiet. It's just learning to break the ice or finding those conversation points, or also like listening to and not,
because isn't that one of the big elements? Because I did
it's listening.
Meg encouraged me to I inspired me to do an improv class. I did musical improv there, but like to play off what she's saying is listening is like the number one thing that makes, let's say, a little sketch successful. Because if you have two people
planning what you're gonna say,
right, instead of planning what you're gonna say or trying to pull for a laugh or something, just listening and communicating. And the whole yes and is in any conversations, if it is with like the uncle at a party or something, instead of the moment you like shut someone's idea down, that's when conversation runs dry. So to be actively listening and encouraging, and I feel like these are like this podcast, you know, it's we could come in with like a slight like outline of something, but you know, if we're all just shooting each other, like, no, we got to stay on topic.
It's being open to being vulnerable. And, you know, some people are, like, I feel like improv takes that guard off you where you can't just say yes. You have to add to the conversation.
So I think, too, in conversations, being okay with silence sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes those are the most, like, potent moments.
Yeah.
Poignant.
Suspense on the podcast. No, but the act of being vulnerable is another yogic lesson, because like the reason all these topics are relevant and people are like, oh, yoga podcast. I mean, we kind of make it a fact that it's the secret yogi and that there's these other practices, but it's all around this idea of these yogic lessons, and yoga as this like overarching like theme of like it's almost like a way to live. I know a book that we mentioned earlier a little while ago was
having it in your toolbox.
Patanjali's sutras, and there's like great books that kind of are interpretive books, and they kind of break down the sutras and kind of how they could be interpreted, but it's almost like an awesome like life lesson book and guide. So like I recommend everyone check that out. But this act of just being vulnerable, that's like the yogic lesson of like putting yourself out there and overcoming these layers, as you mentioned. It's like the peeling away the layers of the mind. If that's practicing the asanas or working out to remove that physical tension, that's one layer. Maybe you're just thinking, my Achilles hurts, my hamstring hurts, this, and then you move it away. Or it's like the act of like, I'm afraid of this, or like this stress and this this buildup of anxiety, and it's like you could peel that layer out, and you're constantly working down till you get to your source, and that's kind of like the whole message of it. And in terms of like, I guess what's next for you both? Like,
that's a good question.
Oh shit.
So it's obviously a confusing time.
So in June. So at the beginning of quarantine, because this whole every life you can't escape the COVID's there. Mm-hmm. So in March, I played my last gig for, I didn't know how long, March 12th. And then Meg taught her last class, I think March 13th, like the Friday after. And then we lived down at the beach for 5 weeks with her mom helping take care of her grandpa, because while her dad was up in Glen Rock running his business. So we lived down there. We quarantined. I quarantined with my mother-in-law and my grandpa-in-law.
It's our first year of marriage.
Our first year of marriage. And that was a very unique experience. But then we left there. We went to St. Louis for 7 weeks because we still didn't have jobs here. And so we went to St. Louis, stayed with my family, my parents, for 7 weeks. And then we came back to our apartment for only one day in those 12 weeks. It's only like 300
square feet.
Yeah, it's a small apartment. It was our first apartment, and it had all those first apartment qualities for us, where we had to like put a spoon in the oven to keep it shut. And then there was definitely mold or something.
Well,
but I'm just saying, all these things, they've led us to this point where June 26th, we finally were like, let's just break our lease and just go.
Well, it was a month to month, so we ended our lease, not like.
No, but I'm saying, but we stopped. We love this place. Is all I'm saying.
And we packed up my car. We told our landlord we're moving in 3 days. It was just like an on the whim. We're like, we had so much space from Hoboken that we like wanted to
just go adventure.
Just have an
while
adventure
we didn't have
during
jobs.
this time.
Like
so
figured.
We made my car into a sleeperoo. We took the seats out, put our dog, and we started going across country and camping and traveling.
But our motto for the trip was like, what are we waiting for?
Yeah.
Like, if we're not acting on anything now, then we're just waiting, for things to make decisions for us. And we're like, let's go make them. So we traveled around for 2 months.
And we
thought we were going to move to Oregon. But then
still might. You never know.
We had a 200-mile hike planned on the John Muir Trail.
Goes through Yosemite, all those national parks, and you have to get permits, and they only give them to like 15% of
8 months in advance. Yeah.
So this was like our honeymoon trip before quarantine started. So it was like 220 miles. So on the way out there, our goal was like to train. So we would do these big long hikes, like
backpack and camp as much as possible,
test out all our gear, and just like get in like good shape as we were making our way out there. And as we were driving to the trailhead from Oakland, California, to go to Yosemite is like whatever it was. It was like a 6-hour drive, and the smoke just
the fires had started 3 days prior to our only start date. So we could either go on this was a Saturday, so we had to either go on Monday or not go, being like, are these fires going to get bigger or are they going to get smaller?
And thankfully we didn't, because a lot of people had to get rescued who started.
But all of that was it was going to be about 14 days on the trail, and we had signed a lease or put a holding deposit down on an apartment in Bend, Oregon. So this whole trip we were just living on a whim, and we were going to get off the trail and have 2 days to go drive up to Bend and just move in. So there's going to be no thoughts like, we're doing it, we're winging it. And
that's kind of how we do things. We're like, in the moment, we're like, I don't want to live here anymore. Okay, let's call our landlord. Let's move out like in 2 days.
But
that's how we do things.
But things were, they seem like they come out of nowhere, but things have a path.
So we
had 2 weeks.
We had
a free time.
We decided like we'll drive back across the country,
grab
say goodbye,
my car.
Say goodbye to everyone, get rid of our storage unit, and then drive back to Oregon. And then on our way back to New Jersey, you have all these hours of talking, and we were going to school was one of my goals, and we were just talking. This decision that we were just going to do, we decided, let's just wait for everything to settle.
It seemed a bit intense.
We both went back to school. Right now we're going to school online. I'm going for environmental science, and James is doing some business courses right now. We'll see where it ends. But for me, I'm going to finish my
school
degree.
Became the priority.
I'm so excited to be learning again, and like I still want to teach yoga, but I want to open my doors like to a lot more. And like my dream would be to like take kids hiking or be like a park ranger, like something or protecting the environment, something. I want to like help more and educate more and just
build
be
awareness,
able to like be able to do that, and have more doors open. So for right now, that's what we're doing.
So,
and then
we're
going to figure it out. It's sort of like we are in this moment where we don't know where it's going to lead. We don't know where we want to live. It's so confusing, but like we have each other, so
we don't have a lot of money, but we have a lot of amazing family and a lot of support. So we're thankful for the community. Basically, if we didn't have people and love surrounding us, we could be like legitimately lost at the moment. But we feel that we're just trying to be level-headed and make decisions. But
we could come back and do exactly what we were doing, and we know that. But we also had the space that we realized that we want to live a little bit differently than we were. Fresh air, like be surrounded by mountains and nature and outdoorsy
and rock climbing and be able to swim in a body of water.
That's
like
clean.
It's so tempting. Like,
so we know that.
Looking at the Hudson every morning, it's beautiful.
I wish that we could.
But like,
swim in it.
you just want to dive in it. Like, I would do it every day.
Yeah.
So we want to do whatever can get us closer to that life, and we love Bend. We're like obsessed with Bend, Oregon. It's still on our minds, and you're still playing music. Like, we haven't totally dropped our things, and now I'm trying to navigate like the online yoga world and working on filming some videos.
Meg's got some cool things
I have
coming
some
up.
great ideas coming up, but I have the space and time to do it. Like, I used to try to film in my apartment, and then it'd be like, can you be quiet over there? Like, so now I have this space just temporarily at my parents' beach house, which is, I'm very grateful to be there.
Like,
but,
this podcast for you, right? Like, all this space allowed for something like this to kind of flourish.
Yeah.
And it's just the little times of commuting to work, even though my office was a half mile away, but
it wasn't enough time.
but it's like that act of getting ready. And I think a lot of people listening to this, they don't know what's next for them. I think they're in transition. They're starting to create space and realize what's most important to them. If it's family, if it's getting out in nature, I think that's awesome. I'm excited for what's coming up with you and your class. I love taking everyone listening right now. You could follow Meghan Kramer on Instagram at Meghan Kramer Yoga, and she's always doing live yoga classes, and they're awesome. I take them all the time. And I know yourself, James. You could follow James on Instagram at James Calleo. And Meghan Kramer, you could check out her website, meghankrameryoga.com. This will all be in the show notes and more below. Devyn, is there anything that you would like to ask them before we kind of close off this story?
I don't think so.
It's to be continued.
It's really nice to meet you guys.
Oh yeah, now we can hang out.
maybe in Oregon. We're going to Oregon soon.
We'll all move to Oregon together, and that's the plan.
Yeah, all the guests listening right now. If you're in Oregon, maybe we'll be there. And if you visit New York, don't swim in the Hudson. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you both. And Devyn, thanks so much for kind of hopping on today, and we'll kind of do this in the future. And also, everyone listening, if you enjoy this type of episode, let us know, and consider leaving us a written review and rating wherever you're listening to, especially Apple Podcast. Consider subscribing to our newsletter at www.secretyogisociety.com. And I hope this episode kind of helps you unlock your own superpowers and embody your own secret yogi. And I appreciate the time of everyone listening and all you guys. So thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Cool.
It was so fun.